job at that point. That's not my role. My role is to help the person who's paying me feel that feeling, or as close as you can fucking get to it.
Right.
But it feels weird because you can feel like you're destroying something that you built. A mix is an ecosystem.
Right.
And everything bounces on everything else. And so when people want to change things because someone didn't feel confident about their bass tone, it's like, you know what? Even though you didn't feel confident about what this is also taking a very approach like I know everything and what I'm talking about, which is we always learn with context is not the case either. But let's say someone wasn't confident about their bass tone or whatever else in a thing. And so they want to hide this and tuck this in a certain way because of the limitations that they hear in that. I wasn't privy to any of that information, and so I just hear music. I don't know about the decisions being made. And so I know functionally, though, okay, while this might not have been the thing they're shooting for in this head, you can still functionally lock this bass up with the drums in this way to give this aesthetic so that the vocal sits over that in a way, so that the vocal is, let's say if it's a lyrical thing that's super dope and a well-written song, it's highlighted perfectly. So you're just carried on a musical wave listening to this person's narration, you know? But you can't always communicate those things because it's difficult for humans to communicate sometimes in the situations. And so while I will do those things to some extent, sometimes acknowledging that this is someone else's art that cares way more about it than you do. And frankly, is kind of, I feel like on a spiritual level, a thing like a birth or creation of theirs.
Sure.
That you don't mess with that outside of, and so it's not yours and you don't take it personally. So up to the first mix is, a product, and then from then on, it's a service.
I like the way you kind of compartmentalize it. I think that's really smart. And also, it's interesting to hear how different people like approach the first mix, right? Lots of people say, no, the first mix is banging, otherwise I'm not sending it. And some people are like, I want the client to hear the first mix, and like I think it's 80% of the way. Like, how do I finish it off?
Oh, I used to do that.
Oh, so what made you change your mind?
For me, that shit didn't work. There's the thing is, and so that's the thing. What's interesting is, and even over time, it's funny how you try different ways of doing things.
Sure.
And if you find that you're unsatisfied with something in your life or some part of a process, like in the thing, it's like, okay, I'm going to keep just trying out variables. Like that is kind of engineering at the end of the day, but it can be life engineering or your process engineering of how I mix or track or record with people. But yeah, it's like, all right, well, I know all these constants are here. I'm going to just flop these variables around until I feel like that's confidently the best I can do with that thing.
Right. And then it'll probably change again.
Yep. And then I'll have to change something in another, 4 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you working in the box when you're mixing?
I work largely, especially right now, because I have to do a lot of things from my home. For a while, I think technically, I'm not even sure if this studio is supposed to be shut down again right now. California actually just kind of like shut everything back down. And it opened for a little bit. But yeah, they're not handling business.
Same here, man.
Very well.
Yeah.
So the next thing is kind of nice to know. And also it's like, yep, same shit all around. But so I have, because I don't know what situation I will be in the immediate future, largely now I am doing things in the box. I'm actually love mixing on headphones. I'm using actually just basic tracking M50. That might be the ones actually that you, anyway. But
the Sonys?
So there's 75-6s, which I have a couple pairs of those. I'm using and they're just the tracking headphones we have at the studio, and so I have a couple pairs. The
Audio-Technicas.
The Audio-Technica M50s.
Oh, people love those. I got to try them out.
I do. They're not like unforgiving and like overly clinical or things like that. I feel like they do give you a good balanced spectrum all the way up. And also when you listen to music that you actually like, it sounds good on them. Like you don't feel like, you know what I mean? Where like actually like, no, right. I could listen to this and enjoy listening.
The Sonys these Sonys are they're great for tracking because they're bright, but they're great,
bright, especially if you have like an SE vocalist or things like that, and you want them actually to learn to work their microphone.
Yep.
There are all sorts of things you can do with how to get good performances.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the headphone mixing is going okay for you?
It's I have to check it on things. I actually like it a lot. It's weird that you lose. It's weird not working with Phantom Center, where when you have true stereo, left speakers is hitting your left ear, and to a lesser extent your right ear, and then the right speakers hitting your right ear, and to a lesser extent your left ear. And it's like, then when you have like a mono vocal, you'll see that phantom center, and you can see that person talking to you in the middle of the speakers, which there's no replacement for that, because there's no reason we should be able to trick our brains to do that. I still marvel at how nuts that is. Oh, here's an interesting thing.
Human hearing.
I'd be curious if you know about this, or just from talking to people. And I haven't talked to enough engineers about this, because usually when with engineers, we don't talk about work, because we do it all the time. But I've actually been noticing the past couple years do you use Pro Tools?
No, Logic.
Logic. Okay. Well, this might not even be a thing to you. Maybe I can air.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll save this for a Pro Tools thing, and then we'll.
Yeah, go for it. I'd be
for
interested to hear,
time.
anyways. You've
the
piqued
thing
my
is,
interest. So
how Pro Tools treats busing with the sound panning does something very interesting to the phantom center that happens with mono elements. And so if I run all the drums through a drum bus, like a drum aux, if I'm doing this in the box, you think that you could just have those things panned at 100, or like 66 if it's Logic or whatever the pan thing is.
64, 63.
Or So you panned hard. What's interesting is there shouldn't be a fundamental difference. I wouldn't think. I probably should talk to Eric about this. He probably knows. But when they're panned, and it's one of these things that's actually been kind of messing with me for months now, and I'm aware of it. Well, anyway, I'll keep explaining. So if I'm sending a vocal through, or let's say drums, if they're going through and I have it panned at 100 full wide, I get a different mononess phantom center than if I have it at straight at 0. And theoretically, it seems like to me, and this could be on a mono source. So if I put let's say if I put a kick drum through, or a sub frequency through, if I put it through a drum bus, if it's a stereo drum bus and I have it at 100, it shouldn't make a difference whether it's at 100 or at 0. At least in my brain, it seems like those should be the same because it's a mono source. But unless my ears and brain are crazy, there is a difference. And so it actually has changed the way I do busing, because instead of actually talking to someone and finding out exactly what's happening with what's going on, I just I'm like, well, I'll just do this for now. And I've been doing it for months, which is hilarious. But so like bass and any type of mono sources I need for vocals and things like that, I do not run through stereo buses anymore.
Really?
If I do, I pan them to dead 0, unless I need their spatial effects for certain points of the song.
Wow. Is there a difference between stereo and duo mono, or that's not even a thing in, I guess, digital?
There shouldn't be, and this is where I would get into talking out my ass mode, where I don't think there should be. If you have one mono signal passing out mono, or dual mono going on, and obviously there's a difference between stereos because it's literally two different sources. Like that's what stereo is a different capturing of something else.
Right.
A different stereo.
Is there a pan? Maybe it's a pan law thing. I don't know. There's like all kinds of stuff that
it might easily.
I haven't even looked too deep. Yeah, I haven't looked too deeply into it.
Well,
like, I know that you
can
change the pan law in Logic. There's different versions of it.
I have not checked, and I can't remember. I don't know if I've even checked in Logic if that's a thing, because I use Logic as well. But I've noticed it more significantly in Pro Tools. And anyway, good things to be mindful of, though, when you want... Because literally I went back through like years of mixes of looking at things. I'm like, I don't know if this phase... Like, I don't know if my mononess was actually as dope as I wanted it to be. Because ideally, if you want mono... Once again, I like bold strokes. So if you want mono, right. I want mono straight down the center. Like, I want you to be able to feel that through the speakers.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally hear that. It's interesting. The reason why Logic is 64, 63 is because there's that's how many bytes you can get. There's like 128 bytes. So if center is 0, so you need like 6. You have up to 64. So Pro Tools is actually lying to you probably by saying there's 100 in either direction because you can't have that many points.
Oh, that's just
digital.
Well, what's a number? You know what I mean? Like who even knows?
I don't know.
They just set the whole things up. I think actually, and I'm on an older version of Logic, which is interesting, and I think it is. I thought it was 66, 66, and so I wonder how that all goes. But that's the thing too isn't it crazy where like humans just come up. Oh, another thing I've learned about this year is that labels are stupid. They're not like they are functional, like they provide use,
That's a great non sequitur.
Yeah, but they like labels are useful for our brain to process and group things into whatever things. They're also enable very lazy thinking.
Right.
Just label. It's like calling it a number. And I'm not talking about that, but you know what I mean? It's like, and it's like, oh, well, what is 166? And it's like, those are the same thing functionally at some point.
Functionally, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super interesting. I guess so before the whole COVID thing, you were doing a little bit more hybrid mixing, or it was still mostly in the box?
So I usually do most of using most hardware while I'm tracking. Mixing, especially because I have to do revisions. Not every time, but often. And because I provide a service. I mean, honestly, largely, mixing is largely in the box because I have to be able to recall, tweak things on whatever thing, and I have to be able to eat as well and live. And so for the pay of what I can do for what I do, I don't have extra time to waste, frankly.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like you guys have enough gear to kind of get things going in.
And so that's the thing is that's the on the input side of things for tracking.
That's where you guys go crazy.
It's literally whatever you want to do to get the thing that's in your head.
Nice. So tell me a bit about the Fits and the Tantrums record. You sent me a track before we started our conversation. Don't Ever Let 'Em. Like, what went into that track? Can you kind of give us just like the background of how that was recorded and how it was mixed?
Sure. The background, I got brought into that project as an engineer by a close homie of mine, a producer named Tommy English, who is a super dope dude and very talented producer, a wizard. He's just another good guy that I'm blessed to be able to work with and talk to. He pulled me in on this project because he was producing, so he wanted an engineer, and we get along. And I love it because I don't have to think about any production things at all. I just am an engineer, and he makes the decisions. And so I do something, and if he doesn't like it, it's wonderful. It's so good having, I'll move on though. So we had done some tracks because they had worked on, Tommy and Fitz had worked on some tracks together, and then they worked with a few different producers for the album, for different singles and things like that, and then there were album tracks. So from working on that with Tommy, Fitz asked me if I could come back and engineer on some of the album tracks. I'm assuming because of budget concerns and things like that, and I was available and he liked me. I guess some mix of those things. And I was like, sure, hell yeah, I would love to do that. Also, he's dope. It's really great too when people are nice to work with and respectful and fun and have good taste, because that doesn't always happen. So he was sick and ended up working on engineering a lot of the album, fuller album tracks, and finishing those out with him. So I guess Fitz could effectively produce at that point, I guess would basically be how that would work. And Don't Ever Let 'Em, that song, he had asked me just while we were kind of hanging out one day between engineering, and so they were sending all the stuff off, the rest of the album off to Mendy Portnoy for mixing, and Fitz had that particular one that he actually wanted to, I don't remember which order it came out with. He actually wanted to lead off the whole album coming out with this track that he had done. I can't remember if he'd written it with Tommy or who he'd done it with, but basically he developed a lot of it out. And then was like, would you be down to just mix this? Like I said, largely I think because of budget constraints and all kinds of things like that. There was no reason it was going to be a single or anything like that. It was just a song that he liked personally. And he, for whatever reason, when we talked, it was like, sometimes you just get along with people. And he's like, yeah, I just want you to I'd like to mix this together. Like, can we just do this? So we were at, and that was the thing is we'd done a lot of the tracking at Henson. For the tracking, I was working with Tommy, and then for the later dates that I just worked with Fitz and the rest of the gang, we were at Capitol for those days, which is sick. That was actually the first time I'd worked in Capitol before, and it's an all right studio. They're doing okay stuff there, I guess.
I'm sure they are.
It's like I was like, this is adequate. It's also fun when you go into a studio and Barefoot has dope stuff here that I have access to, like a stupid pair of U67s, an incredible 251, etc. Just ridiculous things. When I was in Capitol, real quick, I had to ask the assistant or whatever, is like, how many U67s do you have? And I think he told me something ridiculous, like 8 or 12 or something, whatever. And I was like, cool. Which one's the best one? And he immediately, and this is also, I asked, it's fun to ask people that work rooms too, to see, because I have to do it. And so I know, you just know what